Dear Honorable Judge, before I entering the debate, we must understand Indonesia's social and economic realities. Indonesia is not a country with first, stable graduate salaries, second, equal job opportunities, and the third is strong financial literacy or social security system. Many students or graduates still struggles to find decent paying jobs, therefore forcing students to rely on loans for education is extremely dangerous. It is extremely dangerous. But why? Education should be a public investment, not a financial burden placed on young citizens. They say student loans increase access to education because students can pay tuition first and repay them later. But these arguments ignore the reality of Indonesia. Like it really ignores the reality of our state. Access is meaningless if students are terrified of future debt. Poor families are often debt first because one financial failure can destroy the entire household economy. So many students may choose something like a cheaper, lower quality universities and then part-time work that harms academic performance and avoid higher education entirely due to fear of repayment. So instead of increasing access, loans create psychological and economic barriers. The government says countries like USA already use student loans, but USA have a higher average wage, stronger labor protection, and more stable employment systems. Even in those countries, student debt crises still happen. Like the United States has millions of people burdened by lifelong student debt. Why Indonesia should copy a problematic system? Like why Indonesia could be better? Why they should copy a problematic system? So, dear Honorable Judge, our first argument is that student loans burden young people at the beginning of adulthood. Why? Because students graduate already owing large amount of money before buying a house, supporting parents, or building their future. And then this creates pressure to prioritize salary over passion or social contribution for the future. For example, two graduates may avoid your dreams like becoming teachers, researchers, or social workers because repayment demands higher salaries, and people from middle to lower backgrounds suffer the most. But why? Because they fewer financial safety nets like that. And it depends social inequality. Rich students can pay tuitions directly without stress, something like stress, anxious, or overthinking like that because they already have financial freedom. But poor students must borrow some money, accumulate interest, and carry repayment risk. Like this means two students receiving the same education leave the university with completely different starting points in life. So the wealth graduate free, but the poor graduate with debt. Education should reduce inequality, not institutionalize it. Furthermore, banks or financial institutions might become selective. Students from prestigious universities or profitable measures receive better loan terms, while students from rural areas are considered high risk. This creates discrimination within education itself. Also, the students who accepted the loans program could be easily becoming a target by students that is wealthy and pay by themselves, or you can call it bullying. So, when the government introduces loans, it slowly changes the narrative from education is a right into education is an individual investment. And this allows the state to reduce subsidies and increase tuition fees because students can simply borrow money. Universities become more commercialized, education become profit-oriented, and eventually students are treated like customers instead of citizens with with high, as I mentioned in the beginning. Country Countries that successfully implement student loans usually have first higher minimum wage, and then more stable employment opportunities and stronger social security system. Meanwhile, Indonesia still faces limited jobs opportunities and unrealistic hiring requirement. Many fresh graduates are expected to have years of experience even for entry-level jobs, while unemployment among young people remains high. In this situation, expecting students to repay large educational debts is extremely unfair. If this policy is truly meant to help students, then why does the burden only appear after they graduate? Instead of giving students freedom after education, the government places financial pressure on them. They really give pressure on them at the very beginning of adulthood. This mechanism forces students to think less about learning. They force to think less about learning and more about survival. Even when they think about learning, they already survive because of their education. They already stay stressed about their education because education in Indonesia is really many graduates may choose jobs based solely on salary rather than passion, public service or social contribution because they pressure to repay debt quickly. Even the government all argue that and say that not all people can pay those. Like the argument say that not all people can pay those, then why you have to copy and do the programs? Additionally, student loans can worsen inability. So, as the opposition, our burden is not to prove that Indonesia's education system is already perfect. Our burden is to prove that first, adopting a student loan mechanism creates more harm than benefit, and two is there are safer and fairer alternatives, and the third is the government cannot guarantee that students will not be trapped in debt and will not be trapped in debt and inequality. So this debate is education expensive? We already agree it is, but this debate is should students personally bear that burden through debt, and our answer is no. Because what? Because when a state uses loans as the primary solution, it transfers educational responsibility from the government to vulnerable young citizens. In conclusion, students' loans first create a long-term financial burdens, and the second is worsen inequality, and the third is allow the government to avoid its responsibility in providing accessible education. And then instead of adopting students' loans, the government should focus on expanding scholarship, fixing our education system, increasing public unit subsidies, and improving affordable access to quality education without creating long-term financial burdens. Education should be open to opportunities, not create debt traps. For this reason, we proudly oppose the motion. Thank you.